And now this will be true rebel headquarters as Trump and his cronies begin their march against our freedoms. Talk about how historically pathetic the Democratic Party is. That they let this guy, who has never had any success in business, he's had a track record of monumental failure, and they let him win the presidency and become the most powerful. The Democratic Party is gone. But I'm at war with the Democratic Party. This corporatist, weak, spineless, pathetic party that lets the imbeciles on the Republican side walk all over this country, that handed power to a raging, not just bigot, but an incompetent. And I'm done with the losers. And I'm done with those donors. I don't give a fuck what the donors want. Okay? So the DNC, you think we're coming for you? You're goddamn right we're coming for you. We're going to pulverize the DNC. We're going to rip it to shreds. Yes, we are at war now. So we have recently had more revelations from WikiLeaks. They apparently got in, or many types of leaks, including WikiLeaks, and they've apparently gotten into John Podesta's emails. John Podesta running the campaign for Hillary Clinton, and boy, he would know. It's not just his emails, but emails sent to him. So there's a lot of insider information here. In this story, I'm going to concentrate on what they were calling the Pied Piper candidates on the Republican side. So this was early on in the process. This was, I think, around April 2015. So they don't know who's going to emerge victorious on the Republican primary side. So they want to focus on these. What do they mean by Pied Pipers? So here's what they say. There are two ways to approach the strategies mentioned above. The first is to use the field as a whole to inflict damage on itself, similar to what happened to Mitt Romney in 2012. The variety of candidates is a positive here, and many of the lesser known can serve as a cudgel to move the more established candidates further to the right. Now, this is a strategy memo for the Clinton campaign. They have strategy memos. This is not a surprising thing.
Well, from our perspective, we've just published accurately and fairly what Hillary Clinton said her positions were in her secret speeches to Goldman Sachs and in relation to the DNC and its attempt to rig the election to exclude the primary process, to exclude Bernie Sanders. So at the heart of this issue is whether people were told the truth about Hillary Clinton and the DNC. If there hadn't been an ugly truth,
I don't care. We're still at war. We're still at war.
Of course, we're with the Young Turks for a long time. You're part of their network. And to some degree, I think that they have also pushed Russiagate a little bit. And in other ways, well, yeah, a bit. So, and also I know Emma has been really outspoken against Tulsi Gabbard. So, I mean, it just seems like there's also, this sort of MSNBC influence happening in the Young Turks. And I just thought I'd ask you if you had any kind of take on that, or just any kind of insight you might be able to provide.
All I can tell you is that when I started doing this show called Aggressive Progressives, because the main show took a editorial turn, right? So it was after the primary, after they decided Bernie wasn't viable anymore, they went full speed, 100% Hillary, and they had a segment called Loser Donald, so they would bash Donald Trump, and it just, so that was the impetus for Steve O and I, who was the COO of the company, to start a show called Aggressive Progressives as kind of a counter narrative to the way the editorial direction of the main show. And I thought it would be good. We'd be complimentary, right? So we would point out, everybody has blind spots or whatever. Here's what we think. Here's what they. And I thought it would be a good thing. And then I thought that our reporting would, would expose things, and people would see and go, oh, I didn't know this, and it would change how they did what they were doing. That didn't happen. It turns out that my effort to shine a light on contrary narratives of Russiagate was not. It was it just created not a good environment. It wasn't welcomed, and I get that.
Okay, so he wants to put them back in the G7 for no apparent reason.
I wanted to present you with a little gift which represents what President Obama and Vice President Biden and I have been saying, and that is We want to reset our relationship. We worked hard to get the right Russian word. You think we got it?
You did it wrong.
I got it wrong.
Trump conferred with his national security advisors later Sunday and told them that he was upset the sanctions were being officially rolled out because he was not yet comfortable executing them, according to several people familiar with the plan. That's interesting. So all of a sudden, roll that one back. Not as much. In fact, President Trump on Monday put the brakes on a preliminary plan to impose additional economic sanctions on Russia. So look, when it comes to policy, I don't agree with the national security team that we need to be more antagonistic towards Russia, or certainly that we need to do bombings in the middle of Syria without proper investigation or evidence. So it's a funny thing, but in terms of the policy, certainly as it regards to Syria, I agree more with Trump than I do with his national security team. But in terms of who's on which side, the national security team is overly aggressive against Russia, but clearly they are the ones that are pushing the sanctions, the attacks, any kind of rebuke of Putin or Russia. Clearly they're on that side. And clearly on the other side is Donald Trump saying, no, don't do it to the Russians. Don't.
Well, joining us now from the Ecuadorian embassy in London is Julian Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks. Julian, welcome back to Democracy Now!
Good morning, Amy.
Did Russia leak the documents, either the DNC documents or the John Podesta emails, to WikiLeaks?
We will say quite clearly that our source is not a member of any state, including the Russian government. Now, if you look at these statements by James Comey, James Papa, going back a couple of months, statements by Barack Obama, they all are harmonious with our description. Now, what the U.S. investigation by James Comey seems to be trying to say, at least in public, is that they perceived that there was some Russian hacking, or at least some hacking from somewhere, of the DNC, other institutions of the United States. In fact, the allegations are that several thousands of people were hacked in those operations.
But how do you know? How do you know it's not Russia? How do you know it's not a state actor? Since you usually say you don't know who gives you documents.
We look very closely at our publications. We tend to come to a good understanding of them, and so.
Told you. So Trump apparently is changing his Venezuela policy completely. So he had a lengthy call with Vladimir Putin the other day. After the phone call, he came out and said this. I'll read the direct quote for you guys. Putin is not looking at all to get involved in Venezuela, other than he'd like to see something positive happen for Venezuela. That was already hilarious. So here we are. Now, it's not just saying positive things about Putin and Russia and saying preposterous things about how they're not involved. He has now actually changed the policy. Washington Post with a story that just came out a little while ago saying, yes, Trump now thinks that Bolton was too militaristic and was going to get him involved in a quagmire, and he is not in favor of a military option anymore. But if you think that's not related to the call he just had with Putin, who told him what to do, well, come on. I mean, there's nothing I can tell you because I can give you all the evidence in the world, and you're never ever going to listen because you're too biased.
You write in your book something pretty funny. You talk about going to see Putin on something. Anyway, he takes you into his office, and he then asks if Bill Clinton would like to go tagging polar bears in the Arctic.
Yes.
Really macho, right?
Yes.
And you say, well, I'll see about his schedule, but otherwise I'll go.
I did.
Yeah, but the funny is that he gave you a funny look. As if this woman?
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Well, he and I have a long distance verbal volleying relationship. Most recently, the volley came from him, and I've been trying to return it to him.
That was over Ukraine.
It was over Ukraine, and I have criticized him for the invasion and annexation of Crimea and the continuing destabilization of eastern Ukraine, which I think is very dangerous and just plain wrong in 2014 for European countries to be doing that. And also that I believe Russia has missed a great opportunity to really modernize its economy, not be dependent upon oil and gas, open it up more so it's not just, you know, in the possession of some of the oligarchs and cronies of Putin and so much else. Yeah, so he and I go back and forth. But that was a moment when I was able to make a connection with him, and that's why I write about it, because he always comes with an agenda. And if you ever see him on TV or in pictures, you know, he sits, you know, very kind of in a very aggressive way, and just listens and sort of stares at you, and he never really agrees or has anything like a back and forth conversation. It's very dismissive. So this had been going on with me in one of my meetings with him, but I knew that he cared about something I care about, which is wildlife conservation, particularly of endangered species. So I, out of the blue, we were talking about something that he was not happy to be talking about, and I finally said, well, you know, President Putin, I understand that you are trying to save the tigers and the polar bears and other endangered species, and he came awake. He sat up, he said, come with me. He marched me out of the room. We went down the stairs, down the long hall, into an office that surprised all of his security people, who jumped up into an inner sanctum, just he and I, and we went way at the back of this room where he had this enormous map of Russia, and he said, let me show you where those endangered species are. And he was telling me about the tigers in Siberia and the polar bears and all of that. And then he said, I'm going to go up and tag them, and do you think your husband, Bill Clinton, would like to come? And I said, well, I don't know, I'll ask him, but he's pretty busy. But, you know, I'll come if he can't. It was not reciprocated.
Yeah, but that's my point. If you were president and a woman, it would be weird to deal with him, do you think?
No, because I think you have to deal with him with a combination of patience and persistence and strength. And therefore, change up is not all bad. Trying to figure out how you can find any common ground. I mean, we have to stand our ground against him and his recent behavior, but we also need to keep trying to find common ground.
You know, wakey.